In our everyday work schedule, we interact with clients, peers, vendors, and tradesmen, and all sorts of different people on a continuous basis for virtually every day we work, the entire day. And this communication is done in many ways, such as meetings, emails, phone calls, one-on-one conversations with your peers. You're passing somebody in the hallway and you chat for a minute, or you happen to be having a cup of coffee in the morning. So for this module, we are interested in any kind of verbal communication in which we do ourselves or we're witness to. And you'll be able to observe the nonverbal aspect of communication best in your meetings, your weekly staff meetings, your project meetings, as it kind of gives you an enhanced awareness of your fellow peers once you understand what nonverbal communication is. And there are 8 separate categories of nonverbal communication, which we'll go ahead and discuss individually. Let's get this down. Okay, the ability to read facial expressions is an important part of understanding nonverbal communication. If you only listen to what a person says and ignores what the person's face is telling you, then you really only have half the story. Often words do not match actual emotions, and the face belies what a person is really feeling. And that's why so much we say, let's have some FaceTime, so that we at least can see facially that what they're saying, so that we get a consistent view of it, not just the words, but everything. And facial expressions are responsible for a huge proportion of nonverbal communication. Consider how much information can be conveyed with just a simple smile or a frown. And the look on a person's face is often the first thing we see, even before we hear what they have to say. And while nonverbal communication and behavior can vary dramatically between cultures, we find that the facial expressions for happiness, sadness, different emotions are very similar throughout the world. So these are really important things to really notice as you're going through on your facial expressions. Gestures are deliberate movements and signals and are an important way to communicate meaning without words. Common gestures include waving, pointing, and using fingers to indicate numeric amounts. Other gestures are arbitrary and related to culture. So in courtroom settings, and you can see how well this is used, politicians and lawyers are quite good at it. Lawyers have been known to utilize different nonverbal signals to attempt to sway juror opinions. And an attorney might glance at his watch to suggest that the opposing argument is real tedious, or might even roll his eyes at the testimony offered by a witness. And these nonverbal signals are seen as being so powerful and influential that some judges even place limits on what type of nonverbal behaviors are allowed in their courtrooms. So you can see every bit of this has big meaning to us in our everyday management skills. Paralinguistics refers to vocal communication that is separate from the actual language. And although that's a pretty big word, what it really means is the factors such as tone of voice, loudness, inflection, and pitch is really paralinguistic. Consider the powerful effect that the tone of voice can have on the meaning of a sentence. When said in a strong tone of voice, listeners might interpret approval and enthusiasm. The same word said in a hesitant tone of voice might convey disapproval and a lack of interest. So consider all the different ways simply changing your tone of voice might change the meaning of a sentence. A friend might ask you how you're doing, and you might respond with the standard, "Oh, I'm fine." But you actually say those words, but how you say those words might reveal a lot about you. So like if I say, "Yeah, I'm fine," or "Yeah, I'm doing fine, man, it's great," So a cold tone of voice might suggest that you're actually not fine, but you don't want to discuss it. It's kind of a way of putting somebody off, but answering the right answer. And a bright, happy tone of voice might reveal that you're doing quite well. And as you can see, there's all different tones. You have the somber, downcast tone, your bright, happy tones. And cadence is a big thing here, too, as far as how loud and then how quickly or how slowly you're talking. So if you get into a room and you notice that you're the loudest voice in the room, that's paralinguistics. You want to kind of learn to understand the room that you're working in or who you're talking to, and try and match your cadence and your paralinguistics to his so that you can get on the same level and you'll get a better sense of communication and understanding through your verbal communication. And body language and posture is a big deal as well. And it's been overplayed quite a bit since it was a big part of the 70s studies. It was like the overinterpretation of, oh, he crossed his legs, but he crossed them against me, so that means he doesn't like me. Or, he crossed his arms, so he hates me. But you need to be aware of them and do study them and really start looking at them for what they mean in the overall big picture. And like I said, in the 70s, this was the only part of nonverbal language or communication that was even taught, was body language and posture. And you can see now that we have 8 different categories. You'll see that it's really that study has expanded quite a bit over the years. Proxemics is a really important thing to understand. People often refer to their needs for personal space, which is also an important type of nonverbal communication. The amount of distance we need and the amount of space we perceive as belonging to us is influenced by a lot of factors, including social norms, cultural expectations, situational factors, personality characteristics, and level of familiarity. So, for example, the amount of personal space needed when having a casual conversation with another person usually varies between 18 inches to 4 feet. On the other hand, the personal distance needed when speaking to a crowd is about 10 to 12 feet. But one good rule of thumb is that if you extend your hand out from your body straight out, that should be the proxemics that is about acceptable within business. So if you look at a person in front of you and they have an arm space distance between you and them, you're usually okay. But you do want to pay attention to it. And you'll notice people get a little bit nervous when you get too close to them. And a lot of really aggressive and big managers do that sometimes. And they do it on purpose just to get you a little riled up, or they'll stick their head over your shoulder while you're typing. And that just drives me nuts because it's like, oh, wait a minute. Now I got to do this just right. So that's proxemics. And proxemics is a fairly easy science to master, but it's a very useful part of the science as well. So eye gaze is also important. The eyes play an important role in nonverbal communication, and such things as looking, staring, blinking can be important nonverbal behaviors. When people encounter things that they like, the rate of blinking increases and the pupils dilate. And looking at another person can indicate a range of emotions, including hostility, interest, and attraction. So just look at the eyes and see if they're telling you anything. People also use eye gaze as a means to determine if somebody's being honest. If you can't sit there and look them straight in the eye, people don't think you're being honest. And it's taken as a sign that a person is telling the truth. However, if we've been around enough politicians, we know they've learned how to do that. So you can pick up some other things from it. So you see that he's using it too much. It's the old, I think thou doth protest too much. So you really want to watch somebody. If somebody's always trying to stare you down, that's a sign that he may have a real problem, and you need to find out what it is. And shifty eyes and an inability to maintain eye contact, on the other hand, is frequently seen as an indicator that somebody's lying or being deceptive. So, these are all things that you're going to have to personally study and put them into your thought process on a daily basis until you get very, very good at picking up these different indicators as you're talking with people. And haptics is another part of nonverbal communication, and that's really the communication through touch. And that's really not something we do much in business. There's not a lot of room for us to be touching people when we're not we're in a business environment. There's nothing beyond that. So, and you can use it if you touch a person on their shoulders, or as a means of, wow, you did a great job. That can have some meaning, and that's called haptics. But you do need to be careful when you're using it. And touch can be used to communicate affection, familiarity, sympathy, and other emotions. So it's also used as a way to communicate both status and power. And you'll see this a lot. Researchers have found that high status individuals tend to invade other people's personal space with greater frequency and intensity than lower status individuals. And sex differences also play a role in how people utilize touch to communicate meaning. And this is your typical thing. This is why you want to be real careful with haptics, because you may not, the mere fact that you're going and you're leaning over the desk at your project administrator or a young project engineer who's a female, and you touch her on her shoulders and you're talking to her, that may be a little bit more than she's comfortable with. And you want to avoid that at all costs. And really, when you see high status individuals that are invading your space, and I told you, as we talked about in proxemics, these guys will just come over and see if they can't make you nervous. Just be aware of it. And at that point, in your conversations, you have the ability to shut it down very easily, saying, I don't appreciate you're touching me this way, or whatever. So generally speaking, haptics is something you really want to avoid in business, and it doesn't have a real positive swing to it. So artifacts is really one of the last ones we get to, and that's how we dress a lot of times. If we're in a three-piece business suit, that's an artifact, and it's trying to develop an image of yourself, to convey information about the things that are important to you. And uniforms transmit a lot of information about a person. A soldier dons fatigues. Police officers wear uniforms. Doctors wear their lab coats. And what you want to do with artifacts is use them properly. And it's really just having the dress set to where it matches what it is you're trying to accomplish in that one event, or one meeting, or perhaps conversation. So here again, artifacts are useful, and they are part of nonverbal communication. So you should pay attention to those. And if you see a guy dressed up in blue jeans and a t-shirt, however, he's speaking like a PhD from Harvard, there's something going on there. And you want to kind of pay attention to it and see what is what is really being communicated in this message, non-verbally as well as verbally. So those are the basic different categories of nonverbal communication. And as we move into the next part of it, we're going to be looking at that more often. So for this discussion board, the idea is for you guys to really look around you daily now and just start paying attention to all these different categories of things that you see, and how they have impact on other people, and how you could use them to your advantage in different circumstances to make you a better conversationalist as well as a better manager and leader. And a lot of this does lead to leadership qualities, because the leader is the one that actually can get all of these things right. So when he goes and speaks a message, it's communicated in the way it needs to be communicated, and it doesn't have inside there. So that's really what we wanted to do in video chapter 2. And as you study these different aspects of body language, you should begin to pay attention in your everyday work world, as we were just saying. The assignment for this module will be related to how often you see the various aspects of nonverbal communication, as well as the meaning of such reflections being made by people through their body language. So it's really quite helpful for you to start studying yourself as to how many gestures you make in a given meeting, or how proxemics may have an impact to you and your fellow employers, or employees. So you just use it and start playing with it, and you can kind of play your proxemics by getting too close to somebody. You'll notice it real quick. So, and then you can kind of figure out what is the right space for the right type of environment. So we're going to, from there, we'll move into video chapter 3. So let's go ahead and close that 2 right now, and we'll just move on to the next one.